Tell us what you think. In person, over the phone, online. Watch and hear yourself on TV. You tell us, we air it. This is The Local Live.
Good evening, I'm Kat Galliano, and welcome to another episode of The Local Live. Today is Thursday, May 21st, and we're here to bring you the only news show that covers the Mamaroneck, Larchmont, and Rosenblum communities. Let's take a look at the news we have for you tonight. How can we solve parking on Mamaroneck Avenue? Don't go anywhere, because in a few more minutes, our live roundtable will start. Larchmont has its first ever village administrator, and you'll meet him here. Both the Mamaroneck and Rosenblum School District approved a new school budget, and the Larchmont and Mamaroneck Summit talked about the possibility of a community-based health center. The Rosenblum girls lacrosse team wins the game with only seconds left. Stay tuned. Who are our future leaders in science, technology, engineering, math, and art? You don't want to miss this. And we have 3 puppies looking for a forever home. This past Monday, May 18th, the village of Larchmont appointed its first ever village administrator, Justin Dettino. Dettino is stepping down from his role as the village of Scarsdale's deputy superintendent of public works and assistant to the village manager, and will begin his work in Larchmont on June 1st. Larchmont's board of trustees have ratified Dettino's contract, which states that his yearly services include the role of administrator, clerk, and work with the village's water department.
Whereas the village trustees have appointed Justin Dettino as village administrator and village clerk, and whereas the village and Mr. Dettino have set forth the terms and conditions of his employment contract dated April 21st, 2015, and whereas the mayor has executed the employment agreement on behalf of the village, now therefore be it resolved that the village trustees ratify the execution by the mayor of the employment agreement with Justin Dettino. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you.
Check out the Mamaroneck Review for more information. And don't forget that you can see more of this municipal meeting and previous meetings at lmctv.org. The 2015 and 16 budget for the Mamaroneck School District was overwhelmingly approved by voters on Tuesday, May 19th. Almost 1,300 voters turned out, with 82% being in favor of the $133.8 million budget. According to Debbie Mineta, the school district's director of public information, this turnout is down from previous years, which sometimes used to attract up to 2,000 voters. And nearby, Rosenblum's 2015-2016 school budget was also passed by a 4-to-1 margin. Footage of full school board meetings are also available on our website at lmctv.org. And earlier this year, we covered the debate surrounding a school-based health center that is targeted needy students and run by the Open Door Family Medical Center. The health status of both Larchmont and Mamaroneck communities was on the agenda at the Larchmont-Mamaroneck Local Summit's monthly breakfast, held on May 12th. Panelist Lisa Perry, the Local Summit's vice president and Larchmont resident, compared and contrasted Mamaroneck and Larchmont by using their zip codes. Larchmont seems to have a healthier and better insured population, while Mamaroneck has health concerns unique to its demographic.
Well, our district does enjoy relatively high health status. We have some very interesting social disparities. We do have 2 zips. And there are some very interesting differences in the socioeconomic and health status indicators between those 2 zips. When you look at census data from 2010, which was the last census, and when you look at New York State health data, the most recent data that I was able to find on zips covers the 2010 to 2012 period. So, for example, when you compare 10538 to 10543, the residents of 10543 are 3 times as likely to be uninsured, twice as likely to have limited English, 4 times as likely to lack a high school diploma, and twice as likely to live in a household under $15,000 income annually. Just a few sample sort of health status indicators. Again, comparing the two zips, in 10543, women are twice as likely to have had late or no prenatal care. Children are 3 times as likely to visit an emergency department for asthma-related illnesses. Teens are more than 10 times as likely to become pregnant. And residents are 6 times as likely to have Medicaid or no insurance. So just a snapshot on disparities in our own community.
The health concerns of not just students but also the elderly were discussed, especially with the idea of having some form of community health center. The work of the YMCA was also recognized for supporting the Mamaroneck School District. If you'd like to watch the panel, you can find it on lmctv.org in our video section under series programming. And now Marcella Myler will bring us what has been trending in the media this week.
Attention drivers, watch out and wear your seatbelt. According to the patch, in an effort to increase safety awareness and the importance of seatbelt use, state troopers joined by county and local police will be enforcing the New York State annual Click It or Ticket enforcement campaign. So be safe, wear your seatbelt, and avoid an $100 ticket plus 3 points on your driver's license. Don't tell us we didn't warn you. Do you think there's an issue with the new Jefferson parking in Larchmont? Well, you're in luck. 2 foundations have decided to put up half the money to solve the problem. The project would create 3 lanes of parking instead of 2, adding between 20 to 30 new parking spaces for residents. A public hearing will be held on May 27th at 8 p.m. in the Mamaroneck Town Center courtroom to discuss the project. To learn more, visit the Loop. Attention Larchmont shoppers, look out for a huge sale. That's right, Wendy G, longtime specialty store for houseware, furniture, and gift items, is closing after its 24 years in business. The store's owners, Mr. and Mrs. Rubin, say the store's closing is due to their plans to travel and do volunteer work. Don't miss this amazing sale. To find out more, check out the Mamaroneck Daily Voice. Look out, truck drivers. The Mamaroneck Avenue Metro North Bridge on Halstead Street is a little too low. In this year alone, over a dozen incidents have occurred where trucks driving under the passway have become stuck, wedging themselves underneath the bridge. To find out more information, check out the Loop. Get your swimsuits ready, it's summertime. The Stephen E. Johnson Beach on Harbor Island will officially open this Friday, May 22nd. The beach will be open daily starting at 9 a.m. and allowing visitors until 10 p.m. when the park closes. Get your sunscreen out and check out the Hamlet Hub for more information. This is Marcella Milder, and those are the stories in the media this week.
And after the break, our roundtable discusses the parking issues on Mamaroneck Avenue with Mayor Norman Rosenblum, Trustee Leon Potok, and Mamaroneck Chamber of Commerce Vice President Stephen Josephson.
Welcome to tonight's roundtable. My name is Michael Witch, and parking is the subject. And before we go any further and introduce you to our distinguished panel, we sent reporter Marcella Milder out to Mamaroneck Avenue, and she filed this report. Take a look.
Parking on the Avenue has been an ongoing debate in the last 2 Village of Mamaroneck Board of Trustee meetings. This is why, in this week's Local Live Roundtable, we want to hear from residents, commuters, and business owners what they think of parking on Mamaroneck Avenue.
I find the parking is not a problem at all. I used to think I would have a hard time finding a space, but I haven't.
And there just isn't enough parking to accommodate. I think a big problem too is that you can't cross, of course, the double lines the way it's two-way traffic here. And so it's just really inconvenient at lunchtime or dinner time, 7 days a week.
Limiting the parking to 2 hours is kind of ridiculous, especially the fact that you know, even if you move your car, from what I understand, you can park here for an hour and a half, go down the street and park for an hour, and they're going to track the license plate, and you can get a summons. I think just leave things alone. Stop already.
So the merchants need customers and not people who are staying here all day, because that means they're probably not shopping. And so the idea that you would rotate the cars around and allow more people to park sounds to me like a good idea.
I mean, I think it's innovative. I think the chalk is a bit archaic the way they do it underneath the tire. I think that maybe it's a good indicator. I don't know where they're coming up with the metrics for 2 hours, but maybe that's just what they see as the average. So again, I'm not a statistician, but I think that they're obviously coming up with this for some way, shape, or form.
Regardless of whether or not people think there is a parking problem on Mamaroneck Avenue, the Village of Mamaroneck's Board of Trustees have already purchased 18 multi-space parking meters for $6,500 apiece. In the next Board of Trustees meeting, held on May 26th, the public will be able to participate in the discussion on how we should be utilizing these readers. This is Marcella Milder with the Local Live.
Thank you, Marcella. And I'm sitting here with Sibylla. And Sibylla, you went to the April 27th meeting when parking was first discussed.
I did. Mayor Rosenblum moved it up in the agenda. It was item 4D, and it went over for over 2 hours.
2 hours.
People voicing their concerns and opinions about, the resolutions that are still currently tabled. Is that correct?
Well, we're going to get into that in a
Okay.
second, but the point is that you were there, and so you can report on that, and you're also going to be monitoring our social media tonight?
Yes.
So people can call in, they can email in, or they can tweet in, and we'll be happy to pose the questions to our panel. And let's introduce our panel. First, Mayor Norman Rosenblum.
It's a pleasure to be here, Michael. As
Good
always.
evening. And Steve Josephson, you are the owner of Toy Box.
Correct.
On Boston Post Road, but tonight you're here representing the Chamber of Commerce.
Correct.
And you're the vice president there.
Yes, I am.
And Trustee Leon Potok from the Village of Mamaroneck, thank you for being here as well.
having me.
And parking is a problem, as we heard. I think most people on that videotape said, yeah, there are not enough spaces when you want to get on Mamaroneck Avenue. I personally don't find a problem. Every time I've tried to go, I usually find something on the avenue, or I go right behind and park in the lot. But there seems to be a general agreement that there's some difficulty on Mamaroneck Avenue. Now, way back, there was a mayor's committee that you put together.
Yes, the mayor's ad hoc committee, and the purpose of that was to investigate potential for tier parking, which
Okay.
is part and parcel of an entire policy, which is my belief.
Okay.
What we're really talking about here is a different policy having to do with just parking on Mamaroneck Avenue.
So
That'd
that
be
was
part of it.
okay. And what happened recently, Trustee Potok, Leon, do you want to fill us in on what happened? There was a study done that was commissioned by the board. Wasn't a unanimous decision, but it was a decision nonetheless.
In March of 2013, a little over 2 years ago, the
Okay.
board decided to commission a study. We did so. We issued an RFP, a request for proposals. We got several responses, and we selected Walker Parking Consultants. They started their work in late 2013. They had a public meeting to solicit public input in November 2013. It's available on LMC TV. They issued a preliminary report in March of 2014, a little over a year ago, a supplemental report in September 2014, and a final report at a meeting, general meeting, public meeting in December 2014. And since then, we followed up by ordering multi-space meter, which was a recommendation of the Walker Parking Study. And the meeting at the end of April was to float a couple of the recommendations from Walker Parking about limiting the number of hours.
These were the resolutions.
Correct.
That the public had an opportunity to react to.
Correct.
And I watched that meeting, and you were there. And
Yes.
it's fair to say that almost everybody that I saw up at the microphone wasn't in favor of some of the resolutions, especially the 2-hour limitation on that area.
I'd like to point something out, that the entire process, that came about because the public first actually became aware of something that the board was already ready to pass. And it was only because of concerns that were put out on Facebook, word of mouth, and so on, that the public came. That meeting, the village was going to actually vote on passing what would have been a 2-hour limit in the Village of Mamaroneck parking. Originally, you had to move, couldn't come back for 24 hours, and it was 3 hours. Then the last time was at 1 hour. But not to get trapped into that specific, I think what illustrated, and the several meetings since then, is that it is important, and I believe that this is integral, what we decide to do on the parking policies to the diversity and the success of the village of Mamaroneck.
I
We've
know
been
you
very
didn't
successful.
you didn't like the Walker
No,
report at all.
No,
You-
I didn't say not 100%, but I believe that it's faulty in the sense that, and one of the reasons it came about is they didn't ask one store owner. They
Well,
didn't
let me ask a
anyone.
store owner. Did they come to the chamber?
From what I understand, speaking to I'm not on Mamaroneck Avenue, I'm on Boston Post
Exactly.
Road, but representing the Chamber of Commerce, I was speaking to many store owners, restaurants, and from what I understand, nobody went in to anybody to question whose car was parked at a certain spot for a certain period of time, and it just didn't seem that it was a very, I guess, honorable type of study. That,
Not
just
representative
to,
enough. I think
correct, just to walk up and down the avenue and surmise and take for granted that this is what we need. They
Well,
didn't
were
speak
here,
to anybody.
They were here 7 days, I believe. They did a study over that
Sounds
period
about
of
right.
time.
Well, they were also here for public hearing, at which there were merchants, there were restaurant owners who came and voiced
Okay.
and shared their views about whether or not there was a problem, what the problem was, and how to solve it.
I think a good, this represents democracy in action, though. What happened because of the first meeting is that while at the point the decision was, are you going to have zoning, are you going to have parking by space, are you going to have a 2-hour limit, and so on.
Can I
We
interrupt you
actually-
for a
oh,
second,
no.
just to clarify for those people? I just want to put this in a little bit of
Right.
context. The issue is that there are not enough spaces, free spaces, at any time for the people who want to park.
What
Is
the
that-
On
question
Mamaroneck
was,
Avenue.
The question
On
was,
Mamaroneck Avenue.
do we have enough parking spaces?
Okay.
If we don't, do we need to build a tier garage or,
Or something.
add capacity in some
Right.
way? They looked at actual utilization, and they concluded, and you could read it in the report, that we have enough spaces. The problem is balance.
It's important to
between-
say that that report is online.
It is
Yes,
online.
it's
And
online.
anybody
It's on
can
the
read
village
it.
website.
Right.
Correct.
But I guess the problem that was evident, or the situation that was evident that caused the study in the first place, was people were saying that there are just not enough spaces on
The
the
imp-
Mamaroneck
No,
Avenue.
what start-
The impetus was the tier, question of tier parking. Steve was on the maze.
What started was, how this whole thing began, okay, is that I was on a committee for a parking structure behind CVS to be developed with with some retail space on the bottom, going to kind of design like a park on the long side of it, and having parking spaces on top. And they felt at that time it wasn't necessary.
This is the board?
Correct,
Trustees?
okay.
The mayor, right.
The ad hoc committee.
The ad hoc
met
committee, okay.
Privately, without
And-
public input.
And how this all started listen, right now, and it's a good thing, Mamaroneck has growing pains, okay? And it's been very good and thriving on the avenue in Mamaroneck, and down, you're looking for it in a long term. We're not looking for short term. In a long term, eventually this is going to have to happen because there's going to be buildings that they're going to do. The movie theater has been closed down. They're predicting to put condos on top and a little retail on the bottom.
Same with Chatsworth.
The Chatsworth,
Right.
I was just going to get to Chatsworth. Antique store has been
Across the
closed
street.
down. They're going to be putting condos or co-ops on top with, again, retail on the bottom. And then further down on Mamaroneck Avenue, they're trying to rehabilitate and reestablish more buildings there and possibly more retail. If this is all going to happen, and it does happen, you will not have parking, nor on Mamaroneck Avenue or behind CVS. And you will need more parking somewheres. And this is how it all started. And then they felt that it wasn't a good thing, so they did the study along the avenue, and they were stating that there are enough spots on the avenue and behind CVS.
And that would be for the current use or the projected need?
Well,
That's
projected
current
need,
and
you're not going to
current.
have it. For the current, it's
Right.
okay. But
All
then
right,
again,
now wait, hang on, Leo. Leon, you disagree with the
No,
projected?
the projections are projections. I mean, you can make assumptions and
Did
find.
they project out Walker?
They projected out. They added. They assumed in their analysis an additional, I think, 10,000 square feet of retail space and what that would generate. The issue is, in the short, intermediate term, next 3-5 years, there will not be a need for a parking structure. If we built the structure today, all we'd be doing is adding additional space off the avenue, and we already have enough spaces off the avenue. So we'd be building a white elephant that would have to be subsidized by someone, $500,000 a year. The issue is the imbalance between Mamaroneck Avenue demand versus number of spaces versus demand off the avenue and number of spaces there. We need optimal utilization would be we'd have the same vacancy rate of spaces in both places. And we do that by reducing demand for Mamaroneck Avenue spaces, incentivizing people to move to park off the avenue. And so all the recommendations from Walker are, here's how you do that. Here's how you can do that. This is not rocket science. Walker has done these kinds of studies everywhere. Municipalities have a problem balancing the needs of, in the central business district, between the needs of commuters, residents who come to shop and patronize shops and restaurants, and people who work in the downtown district. So who gets the prime space, the most convenient spaces? That's the question.
I talked to a business owner on Mamaroneck Avenue, and I asked him what he thought of it, and his response to me is that he put all the blame on the business owners and the people that work in the businesses, and said it's reprehensible that they park on the street all day and feed the meter. And I said, well, what do you do for your employees? And he said, I buy permits for them, and I make them park where they're supposed to park in the long-term lot. And he said, if every business owner did that, there wouldn't be any problem on Mamaroneck Avenue. Do you
That's
agree?
sort of misleading. And I think a couple of the statements have to be addressed. First of all, the Walker study, as I noted before, is incomplete. And the irony behind it is that one of the municipalities that they noted, which their success was Brookline, Massachusetts. I spoke with Todd Corain, who's the transportation administrator. They actually took their multimeters out. The multimeters used only in off-street parking. They went back to individual type of meters, which we can do on here. And it also leads to even a most important question for the viability and future of the Village of Mamaroneck. What do you want the Village of Mamaroneck to be represented? Are we going to continue to be the friendly village and attract people to come here? I have a chance to go to business functions throughout the entire country, and I can tell you that municipalities, cities, states spend millions of dollars to attract people to their municipality, and they want them to stay there. They don't want to kick them out after 2 hours.
And you feel very
3
strongly
hours.
that it's making Mamaroneck look unfriendly. In fact,
Absolutely, it's not
that was
And
a
you can
comment.
issue, and you can issue tickets and so on.
That was a
everything else.
comment that a lot of people made at the
Right.
meetings
If
that I
it's-
saw
If it's not
on
broken,
video.
don't fix it. And as a matter of fact, when I spoke to Todd, they had the multi-space meters there. They've taken them out, and they replaced them with individual meters. There are meters that are available that can do the same thing as the multi-space meters.
Well, let me stop you there, though. But we are getting these new multimeters, are we not?
We already have them. They're purchased.
We already have them.
The difference is that in Brookline, it's parallel parking, and they used pay and display, and people complained about it. What we plan to do is either pay by space or pay by plate. In either case, you would not have to go back to your car to leave a receipt showing how much time you paid for.
And I heard you at one of the meetings give an illustration of a couple things that people could do to help them remember their plate number, because I don't remember my plate number, but such as taking a picture and keeping it on your smartphone or writing it down, etc. I thought I saw a question that we had ahead of time, since we alerted people that we were going to do this show, that there was an issue about privacy on the plates.
Well, that was
that
was the license plate readers. I think
But
that
isn't
there was a
that-
question
isn't that-
about an invasion
answer when
of
he's done.
policy. However, I would note that I believe after the discussion, not only last night but at the meetings, that the license plate reader is not will not be in favored by the majority of the board. It remains to be seen at a
Okay.
public meeting, but it's not necessary. It would entail purchasing of the license plate readers, which are the main use is really for a criminal investigation by the police department. We have one that's owned now by the police department. Why would you want to buy license plate readers and put them on PEO vehicles instead of giving it to the police department, which you're using for
talking about the
Homeland
meter,
Security?
the meter.
Not the meter, the license plate reader.
No, I mean, yes, you want to, right, you're arguing that they'd be better off on the police department cars.
Absolutely, even if you buy them. To keep the focus question on what do we do in the Village of Mamaroneck for parking, I favor not the multi-space meters. The multi-space meters that we already bought should be in Hunter parking lot, should be in Spencer, should be in CVS. We have available, I don't know if it's available now to show on television, but I spoke with IPS, which ironically is what Brookline replaced the multi-space meters with. And they
Has this been brought up?
It will be brought up. I just found this out.
So it has not yet?
No, we discussed this last night, and you can watch it right now. That's a 360.
These are different. This is a different meter than the one that was purchased.
This is not a multi-space. This is an individual meter that you can right now replace the posts that are there. And they can do exactly what the multi-space
And that's going to be
do.
brought up at the next Board of
absolutely.
Trustees work session, or is this a public session?
It'll be a public session, work session. Hopefully this will be ongoing.
Right.
And just to get to the point before, without dragging it out, is that this is an open-ended question now. They're not going to be jammed down the throats of the people. And I can guarantee you as the mayor that public opinion will be available at all meetings.
And I believe, Leon, if I heard correctly, that the proposals that were initially debated have been tabled now, right?
Correct. Now, let's just get back to the privacy question. Since the mayor raised several issues, I think they need to be
Actually,
filled in. On the privacy,
somebody who emailed this ahead of time raised the privacy
There is no privacy issue. There's a court case, New York State Supreme Court case, that will go to appeal, declaring that the information from license plate readers would be an invasion of privacy to release it to anyone but the owner of the vehicle. So no member of the public can foil, namely request on the Freedom of Information Act, information from that's gathered either from the meters or from the license plate readers. So that's a non-issue for privacy.
That's the current law.
That is the interpretation of the current law.
Okay.
That's a court case that will be appealed. It will be ultimately decided in 2 years. But in the meantime, if we were to institute license plate readers and pay by plate, all that information will be confidential. Secondly, the notion that the issue is, do we use multi-space meters, which cover 15 to 20 spaces, or do we go to the individual electronic meters, which allow you to, one of the advantages of both is you can pay with credit card or debit instead of having to carry coins. And in either case, you can change the pricing, in a way that the mechanical meters are harder to do. You can establish pricing by time of day in a way you can't do with the mechanical readers. However, the individual readers are more appropriate to low traffic areas, low utilization areas, and the multi-space meters allow you to switch between pay by space versus pay by plate should you ever decide to. Within the next 4 to 6 weeks, local residents will be able to see the use of pay by plate in New Rochelle. Every one of the public parking lots in New Rochelle will be based on pay by plate. When you go to New Rock, you will pay by plate. They will enforce it with license plate readers. That's a automatic license plate reader on a car can cover 15 square miles a day. We in the village enforce time limits with chalk. An enforcement officer has to go out, chalk the tire, come around an hour, 2 hours later, and see whether or not the chalk mark has moved. That's
been erased.
Or been erased.
Yes.
And it's terribly inefficient, and it's obviously not being enforced because it's such an inefficient process. License plate readers would allow you to enforce the time limits that we have around the train station in order that we use to keep commuters off the local streets. And they could also be used, obviously, if we did pay by plate.
Okay. The mayor thought that the board has agreed or will agree not to adopt the plate readers, or
that's what it appears to be. It remains
it's continuing dialogue.
I mean, from the survey that I have been speaking to with people as residents, as shoppers, as store owners.
This is your own survey or the chamber survey?
The chamber survey, me going up and down, I have people doing the same thing, is that they do not want the readers. It's absolutely absurd that they want these readers. What's
the reason?
Well, besides being the invasion of privacy, they just feel also that before we run, we have to walk, And putting in, whether it's the multimeters or the single meters like we have now, and the single meters are computerized, that they can take credit cards and different types of payment methods or whatever, And then what we should do is we should brand our village with signage, telling people that there is parking behind CVS, tell them that there is parking down on Prospect Avenue, tell them that there is parking in other areas, okay? And to enforce maybe the rules and regulations we have now, okay, before we get into something even new, okay? The rules and regulations for a 2-hour parking that we have now, or a 3-hour parking that we want to do, and get paid by spot rather than a reader, okay, I think would be more efficient to the public. And business is tough enough as it is. Why make it more difficult for the public to shop in an area, whether it's Mamaroneck or Harrison or whatever, more difficult? You're only going to chase people from an area because it's too difficult to park. It's too difficult. I got to remember my spot number, no problem. 1, 2, 3. I got to remember my plate number, got a problem. Okay, and especially if you have handicap. Okay, you have handicapped people. Okay, and you have snow.
I see.
Okay, you have many problems. But before this all should even take place or even be considered, I think we should enforce the rules that we have now.
Okay.
Okay.
I agree. And as a matter of fact, to continue the debate back and forth, I believe it is be a specious argument whether the license plate readers are legal or not. That remains to be seen. The fact of the matter is, what do you want the image of the Village of Mamaroneck to be? Do you want someone to pull up who's a young mother with 2 kids, or someone who pulls up who's handicapped, to get out and do what they do now? Go to the meter, you punch in the number that's right there, and you walk away. You don't have to come back again. If you have one of these 18-space, multi-space meters go out, you can't use that meter. Oh, well, they say it's okay. You can go to the other ones that work. So now you have to walk twice as far. It is, what is the image you want for the Village of Mamaroneck, and how friendly is it going to be?
And I think it's fair that all 3 of you would agree that we all want the village to be the friendly village.
Absolutely.
And we want
And a thriving one.
Yes, and we want to maintain the availability of parking. The question is, how do we get there, and what rules do we put in place? I see we have an email. What is
Yes, from Charles. He says he is an ACLU member, and the ACLU recommends that license plate readers be used only by law enforcement for criminal investigation, not by parking enforcement officers. So is the trustee, and I'm assuming he's talking about you, Mr. Potok, are you proposing that plate readers are aware of this? Were you aware of this before the idea came up to possibly purchase?
We have the ACLU report online as the backup to our last meeting.
Okay.
I think their point is privacy, and current law in New York State, not in other states, is that information is protected. It's private.
Right.
So it goes far beyond what the ACLU has recommended in terms of limitations on how long you keep the information. It's simply not available. And we wouldn't keep it for very long anyway. We would keep it for 14 days, maximum of 30 days, and would not be available to village employees as well.
Joseph.
Okay,
oh,
we have
sorry.
another.
There's a comment from Joseph on that, actually. He says he's a business owner on Mamaroneck Avenue, and he says, I do not agree with any act of gathering data by a municipal agency based on personal information to solve a parking issue. Notwithstanding the intrusiveness of the data gathering, I have little confidence that such information would be protected and routinely purged. I believe that the village would be creating unnecessary risk, and the release of such information could constitute an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy.
I would like to, we're going into a trap.
I just want to say something,
It's not required
too.
to have this at all, to have this parking policy
Right.
become effective. It's
Okay.
very
Yeah.
simple. Get rid of the license plate readers, and now you decide, do you want the multi-space or do you want the single-space readers? And the irony is when you talked about, one, we're not New Rochelle, we're not White Plains, we're not going to be any of those cities. We want to be the friendly village here. There's a reason why company after company rates the Village of Mamaroneck as #1. CNN Money Magazine, Willow, Zillow, and the rest of them.
Yes.
It's because of image. And you have to be careful. Don't rest on your laurels. If the village becomes, everything is image and perception. If the perception is you're going to go to the Village of Mamaroneck and they're going to bother you and they're going to give you a ticket, believe me, they're going to go someplace else. One quick point. Harrison has free parking.
Yeah.
Larchmont has free parking. Rye has free parking. Village of Mamaroneck, you pay. You can't find a parking space in the Village of Mamaroneck at points because you're successful. The other places have empty stores. What's the future you want for the Village of Mamaroneck?
And one of the things I heard at the meetings was actually a compliment to you, both of you, Mr. Mayor and Trustee Potok, about how difficult this question is, and that it brings up a lot of emotional feelings about friendly village, unfriendly village, attraction, keeping people away from, and an acknowledgement that this is kind of a thorny problem. It's difficult. And
It
that
is.
you're all doing your best, and you're all passionate about where you believe the village should be going. So
We're all trying to solve a problem. The question is, what are the best solutions? The problem with pay-by-plate and license plate readers for parking enforcement is it's fairly recent. People aren't familiar with it. They're not
Right.
comfortable with it.
Right.
The first reaction is, oh, I don't want to give you that information. And that's understandable.
Sure.
If the public doesn't want it, we will need to find other ways to solve the problem. When you go on Mamaroneck Avenue, 1 out of 5 cars on average is from someone who has parked there for 3 hours or longer. So who are those parkers most likely to be? They're most likely to be employees and business owners.
Right.
And that's been true for 30 years. The same complaint was raised 30 years ago when a parking commission study was done of local residents, and they recommended a 1-hour parking limit on Mamaroneck Avenue.
So I'd like to ask you, was the store owner that I talked to correct to say all we have to do is go to the business owners and have them get permits and insist that their employees park off Mamaroneck Avenue?
It's already available.
Is that
It's
is it
available.
as simple as
Available
that?
right now. You can go in. Molly Spillane's buys 12 spaces. I don't know what other do because Mike brought it up one of the meetings, and he encourages, in fact, tells his employees to do it.
Right.
But it's still a specious argument. The majority of the people that come to the village of Mamaroneck, I would say, conservatively 50%, sometimes as much as 75%, do not live in the village of Mamaroneck. They're not going to be familiar with it. Steve hit it right on the head.
And they pump quarters in a meeting?
Absolutely. But the first thing to do here is exactly what Steve said, and was supposedly agreed by the board at the initial meeting when people
I'm so sorry,
got it in.
gentlemen. We do have a caller on the line.
Okay.
Thank you very much for holding.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Oh, okay. My name is William Reed. I'm a resident of Mamaroneck, and my family has had a business in Mamaroneck for the last 75 years. And I agree with what everyone is trying to do with resolve the parking situation on Mamaroneck Avenue. However, I know what goes on Mamaroneck Avenue in the sense that many of the employees who do not live here do still park on Mamaroneck Avenue and feed the meters. So it's not just an issue of having availability of those for those people who can park in dedicated parking spots, but the enforcement of that, and that is the real issue. We need a carrot and a stick program for those people who do feed the meters to get off the avenue, to allow people who are coming to shop there or eat there to do that. So I'd like to pose that question both to Norm and my other friend who's on the board to answer those questions.
Okay.
Actually, one of the, to specifically answer that question, it's a good point. It's a dual answer. One is enforcement, there's no doubt about it. The other one, which an idea came up on this discussion, was that they could have another overlay business district on Mamaroneck Avenue where somehow you require, and it's Charlie Goldberger is looking into this, where the village, not the village employees, but the store employees are required to park in the back, either in Hunter Lot or in CVS, of which, by the way, it's almost a 50% discount. And it behooves the people to do it because they would save a lot of money. But I just want to make one important point before Leon speaks, and that is, the important point is that you have discussion from the public on this, and it's got to be ongoing. The answer is not from the 5 people on the board. We are supposed to be representatives.
Well,
Period, and we're going to represent. We have the
You
vote.
have to vote, and you got the control over our
That's
tax money.
correct, but at least listen to the people before you vote.
And you are listening. I mean,
Absolutely.
That microphone was hot the 2 nights I listened to it. But wait, you're on, Leon.
So let's start first. Let's be clear. The April 27th meeting, we put out resolutions that reflected recommendations from Walker to get public input. That's how you get public input. You hold, at your regular meeting, you put out resolutions of what you're considering doing, and you solicit a response. And based on that response, you either vote that same day or you decide to table it and do more research. There was no plan to cram anything through. It was to start a conversation. We've been trying to have this conversation for the last 2 years. The issue, you cannot, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think it'll take our village attorney long to say that you cannot require village employees at village businesses to park off the avenue. You can't discriminate against them versus anyone else off the street. How can you do that? Secondly, the moral suasion does not work. It's simply, convincing people of the damage they're doing by taking up valuable spots, and that it's in their economic interest to park elsewhere where it's cheaper is not going to work. They're making that decision independently of what the larger impact is. So the issue is how are you going to solve it? With the pay-by-plate, the technology would allow you to solve it by, for example, charging more for the 4th hour than you charge for the 1st hour. Because if the 4-hour parker parks off the avenue, you now have opened up the spot for 4 hours that would otherwise be taken. Now, if that technology is not acceptable, and there's a lot of public sentiment against it, and that's unstable, that's fine. We'll try to figure out what we can do with pay by space. And over time, people will get used to the idea of paying by plate. They'll have that experience in New Rochelle and elsewhere in the area. And over time, the resistance will no longer be there. And if the solutions we've come up with haven't worked, we can reconsider of using pay by plate. If we buy the individual meters, we will not be able to reconsider that 3 or 5 years down the road.
So that's absolutely wrong, and I have to correct it, because the irony here is that Brookline, Massachusetts, when I spoke to them, they went from the multimeters to the individual meters, and I don't know if they showed it or not, perhaps you showed it again while we're talking, that you could change the 240 spaces on Mamaroneck Avenue in one day. You can do the exact same thing. There are little computers in there, and you can have the exact information and the same options for individuals that you can do. And the key is when you get out of your car, if you're a young mother or you're handicapped or something, you go to and you punch in your number that's right there.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about your license plate number. You don't have to worry about
Well, a meter
someone
that's
scanning
right in front of
down.
your car is more handy.
So-
But all that information that you're talking about is going to be presented at the next meeting?
Correct.
Okay.
And perhaps the mayor will also look at the economics of the individual meters versus the multi-space meters. I'm sure he hasn't looked at it yet.
Oh, I have. As a matter of fact,
We'll see.
So then-
We'll see some
if
analysis.
you want to know, we'll do it in a public meeting, but the cost is the same.
I would like to go to one thing that, what, Steve?
So what the readers are really going to do for us down the road is it's like a babysitting job, okay? And now we're going to use these readers to scan cars, and we're going to find that 35, 40, 45% of these cars are parked because they work on the avenue. So if we can engage and implement permits and make it more or less mandatory that they have to park off the avenue, I think that could help a lot.
Okay, well, that's,
okay, now
that's
also,
what Leon said, is that he didn't think it would be legal for
That
the...
remains to be seen.
also,
It's being viewed.
okay,
It's being
speaking
viewed.
to
Well,
retailers.
Let me throw out something that might be a little crazy. Suppose you made the off Mamaroneck Avenue for employees free. You give them the permit for nothing. I mean, that's a heck of an incentive to save if they put money in the meter all day, what do they spend? $5, $8?
It's
Something like
Well, it's
that.
$1 an hour, but
$8 to $9
Okay.
a day versus
Suppose you
$4
made
a
it
day.
free.
If they park the full 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. at 75 cents an hour, that's $7.50.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, we have another caller on the line.
We're busy tonight.
Thank you once again for calling. Hello?
Yes, hi. This is Angela Giraldo. I'm a Mamaroneck resident.
Go ahead, please.
Yes. So I have a clarification about the Supreme Court case that Mr. Potok mentioned. This Supreme Court case is actually a Monroe County case in New York State. Now, the Supreme Court is actually the lowest state court in New York, and any ruling by a court in Monroe County is not legally binding in Westchester County. So until a court that controls Westchester County decides whether or not plate readers' data is spoilable, it is not legally binding in Westchester.
So the fear you have is one of privacy invasion.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you very much for calling in. And
Thank you.
That remains to be seen. Is
If
this
that's
right?
the case, that's the case. I mean, the information about the case in Monroe County was given to me by Robert Freeman of the Committee for Open Government for New York State, who said it applies across the state. If perhaps he does know the law as well as Angela Giraldo.
Well, Trustee Potok cited ACLU. I would like to quote ACLU recommendations. License plate readers may be used by law enforcement agencies only to investigate hits and in other circumstances in which law enforcement agents reasonably believe that the plate data is relevant to ongoing criminal investigation. Just the fact that they note that. And when I had a discussion with the chief of police, I'd limit his response and comment is that the license plate readers are used by the police department for criminal investigation in association with Homeland Security, not parking.
Okay,
you
but
don't
if
need
they-
it. That's number
If
one.
they're going to be if they're shortly going to be used in New Rochelle, then they have to have license plate readers, don't they?
Of course they
Well,
they
that's up to
do.
them. First of all, we're not in New Rochelle.
I agree.
This
but,
is the
but
friendly
they
village.
must have wrestled with that question.
And the police department will not get access to any of this information except by request for criminal investigations. So it's not, the data stands alone by itself purely for parking enforcement.
But the board is sensitive to this
Absolutely.
potential issue.
I find it interesting that Trustee Potok continues to push
Well,
the license plate readers because the majority of the board so far, and we will find out publicly, appears
And
not
we'll
to be in
find out.
favor of it.
Exactly.
At this point, it's a
To
public
be
discussion.
to
We're
be
trying to
continued.
educate the public about what the alternatives are, what the trade-offs are, and ultimately to
Educate's a
make a
good word.
decision.
So right now, the village has received the new meters, but they
Correct.
haven't
We
been
have
installed.
Correct. We have to decide how to install them, whether
Okay.
with a pay-by-plate or pay-by-space, or as it sounds like the mayor is going to propose, we sell them off and buy the
Or put
individual
them in a
meters.
different
Don't
place.
put
anyway.
words in my mouth. I'd say we're going to sell them all.
Put them in a different place. I
Should
think
put them
you
in a
said.
different place. It's number one.
What about the limitation? There currently is a 2-hour limit in parking on
That's the
Mamaroneck
current
Avenue.
code.
2-hour limit
Per
per
space.
space,
Per
but you
space.
can move into the next spot.
Right.
Correct.
Okay?
Right.
I'm sorry, we have yet another caller.
Well, don't be
Lines
sorry.
are
That's,
hot.
that was the purpose of our show here. We brought these folks together so that our viewing audience could ask their own questions and make their own comments. Caller, go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, please talk. You're live.
Okay. I'm live. Hi. I was wondering, on the demonstration of the single-use meter that we just viewed, does Trustee Potok know that that meter comes with an option to install a wireless sensor in the parking space that would actually give him all the information he's requiring, but with the license plate readers, it would produce that same amount of information. It would tell you exactly when a car pulled in, how long it's been there, without the invasion of privacy of giving any license plate or any information. And also an added feature that you can't do with a multi-space meter is when you leave the parking space, that sensor will actually reset the meter to 0. So currently, if you go to the village of Mamaroneck and you park and you put in a quarter for 20 minutes and you're only there for 5 minutes, you pull out of that space, someone else is parking there 15 minutes for free on your quarter, and the village isn't making money. These sensors will, in fact, reset those single space meters to 0. So each car that does come into the space will have to pay from 0.
Caller, do you have expertise about these new meters?
No, what I did was a 2-second Google search. I don't have $2,000 to pay.
Google tells all.
So
We're getting
and
some.
there's a company that does that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We're getting some bad feedback on the line, so we'll just watch and we'll answer your question, Leon.
There is a technology. It's basically you install essentially what people call hockey pucks in the space. So when it's a sensor that tells the meter when you've left. So it resets. The multi-space meters, whether it's pay-by-plate or pay-by-space, do it the same way. They don't record when you leave. They don't know when you leave. You know when you paid. But if there's time left on your space, the next driver coming into that space doesn't know that, and in effect, the clock starts again for them. So it's the same economic value. The problem with the single spaces, they're more expensive to maintain, they're more expensive in terms of transaction costs, credit card, and they're more expensive for wireless transactions because you're communicating information back to the central headquarters. So they are much less cost effective than the multi-space meters.
Once again, it's a misstatement. The fact that, no, it's important because people are going to look at this. The single space meters are exactly the same availability as the multi-space meters. They are solar powered. And as a matter of fact, the single-space meters will not require a $20,000 a year, a $15,000 a year maintenance contract, which is required for these multi-space meters. It's actually more economical in the long run to have the individual space meters. But I'll go back again, even though it'll be part of the public discussion, is what do you want the Village of Mamaroneck to be represented? Are you going to be friendly? The people that come here, do you want to make it easier for them? Get right in front of your car, here's your meter, punch in your number, and go on your way.
I hear you. I wanted to ask about the 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. slot, because currently we don't have to put money in the meters after 6 p.m.
Correct.
Is it agreed that we're going to extend it to 9? Or
the
is that
recommendation
still
from
being
Walker
discussed?
was to extend it. They didn't stay in the evening, so they don't know how late the busy period, the peak period is, whether it's to 8 or 9. My sense is that after we install whatever we install, we will have data about utilization. So we will know how busy it is, and we will see quantitatively what we all see when we drive up and down the avenue at 6 p.m. It's substantially very full. And at that point, we would extend the hours. Probably, my guess is probably to 8 p.m. To start with, and then see whether or not utilization at 8 p.m. is high enough that it warrants extending it another hour.
How do you respond to the cynics who say it's just another way to make more money for the village?
The purpose of it is those spots are occupied generally at 5 o'clock or thereabouts. People pay for an hour, and then they occupy them for the rest of the evening. So it's that's why it's so hard to find parking.
They're at dinner.
They're at dinner, or they're visiting residents.
Right.
We don't know where they are. So if we extend it to 8 p.m., we will see, does that having to pay for 3 hours instead of 1 hour motivate people to move elsewhere, where instead of paying 75 cents, they would pay 25 cents, for example. And if that doesn't motivate them, we can extend it to 9 p.m. We could look at what's called dynamic pricing based on utilization. So, for example, in the mornings, everyone knows Mamaroneck Avenue is pretty empty from 8 a.m. to almost 12. We could reduce parking rates during those hours from 75 cents an hour to 25 cents an hour and see whether or not that generates additional business. If, in fact, we're still very busy from 6 to 9, we can choose to raise our rates during that period from 75 cents to an hour. We can use pricing to drive behavior. That's what businesses do all the time.
Well, I find it interesting. I will preface my comment by saying I would certainly keep an open mind as to if you want to extend it from 6 to 9. However, my basic philosophy is right now I wouldn't agree to that for several reasons. One, I don't care what you call it. Whatever you pay to the government, whether it be in a meter or your school, it's a tax. Again, is what does the Village of Mamaroneck represent? The same method or the same idea that you just had, perhaps you should consider having the employees park for free in the back or very deeply discounted, is a marketing tool, and there's a reason to do that. It's the same thing. It's an investment in the Village of Mamaroneck. Are you doing it just to garner money? And what is it going to cost you in the long run? I'd rather have people come here in the Village of Mamaroneck and stay in the Village of Mamaroneck. And if they go into a restaurant for 2 hours or 3 hours, people come in, they're going to go to the nail salon, okay? And then they're going to go shopping, and then they're going to go something to eat. Do you think they have to worry of going out? With the new meters, though, you'll be able to call up. But how about all the people that come in for the first time? Are you going to want them to come back, or are you going to scare them away?
I got to call a meter.
That's actually a really good.
You can call
I
a
have to
meter.
call a meter. I got trouble.
No, you don't want to. Actually, I did in White Plains. It works very nicely. You don't have to run back. You
I
just
think
punch
we're
it.
all in agreement that we want the village to be friendly, and
Correct.
we want to be cost effective.
And the point of this exercise is not to generate revenues. The point of it is to make it more user-friendly, to make it more convenient to park on the avenue. So people who value convenience can park on the avenue, and people who value price, the cost of parking, can park behind the avenue. That's the way you find the balance, and we have to find the tools and the best tools for doing that. We can use the excess revenues to provide free parking for employees. We can use it to reduce our parking fines. We can reduce the fine to $10 if you pay it on the spot at the multi-space meter.
I find it
Hang on
very
before you get to that.
You
ironic.
need to do analysis for it.
If it's not broken, don't fix it.
No, do we have an email?
Yes, we have an
Okay.
email from Peter, and he says the Walker study made several recommendations, not just the 3 proposed by Trustee Leon Potok, which are the plate readers, the 2-hour
Wait a
zone
minute. I
parking.
didn't hear that these were proposals made
And
by Leon.
extending-
These were
Walker.
These were
Meter
Walker
hours.
proposals. Okay.
Okay, so they are Walker proposals.
Right.
So Peter asks, why are only those recommendations from Walker, which can potentially drive visitors away, which is something that you just mentioned, proposed? Why are those recommendations that might shoot people away, why are they being proposed? Why aren't the other Walker study recommendations to create turnover proposed, which is another thing that I noticed more than one business owner pointed out at that April 27th Board of Trustees meeting.
What were the other proposals? Do you have an example, for instance?
There was one that was talking about, restricting the zone so that you don't have
Right.
car shuffling, which
Correct.
is basically
Park
just
by
moving.
zone versus park by
Well,
space.
Park by zone, park by space. From the top of my head, I remember seeing one.
Can I tell you?
Oh yeah, sure.
I have it
please.
in writing. I don't have to remember.
Awesome.
So the recommendations are to balance, shift some cars from Mamaroneck Avenue to Phillips Park, Tier Garage, and other off-street areas. How? Time limits, 2 hours versus 4 hours, loading, allowing people to park 15 minutes, extended meter hours, 6 to 9, 6 to 8. Rates, raise rates to $1 on Mamaroneck Avenue. It's a premium product, charge for it. Enforcement, pay-by-plate meters and scanners. Those are the key recommendations. There are others. Usability, improved Phillips Park Road and other alternatives with permit regulations, shared parking, possibly valet parking, signage, a website. So we're trying to do it gradually. We're trying to do it incrementally. We can't do everything at once. We have a wayfinding study that was about to be initiated to produce better signage. We haven't decided. The recommendation was also to buy multi-space meters off the avenue in everywhere else in the central business district. We didn't do it all at once. We want to do it gradually, see how get people used to the idea, so people who are resistant, the most resistant to change, can in the meantime go on Phillips Park Road, Spencer Lot, Hunter Tier Park, and gradually get used to the idea of whatever new meters we put on the avenue. And then we will introduce, the board will consider adding multi-space meters or whatever else we do off the avenue.
Okay.
I find it very selective, though, that Trustee Potok notes that it was pay by license plates and zones, where it clearly says in there was a choice, pay by space, which I believe, it's another discussion. But I want to make one key important point, and I'll go back to one of my original statements. One of the inequities or faults, I would say, of the Walker study is they did not ask the store owners, they did not ask the restaurant owners, and in all the discussions, the supposed main purpose of this is to help the turnover and help the stores and help the owners. Well, they came forward and said, don't do us any favors, it works. If it's not broken, don't fix it. It's interesting to see what happened, and I firmly believe that if it wasn't for that meeting on the 27th and the subsequent meetings and everything else, that would have been jammed and it would shove down the throat of the Village of Mamaroneck. You would have had a 2-hour parking limit and everything else that was all ready to go through. It was backed off because democracy worked. And I invite everyone who watches this to continue to be very cognizant of only the work sessions and the Board of Trustee meetings. Don't let this be jammed through.
When is the next
Tuesday.
time that people will have an opportunity to hear?
Tuesday the 26th.
Tuesday the 26th
Correct.
of May?
Yes.
We don't have any recommendations from our village manager of alternatives for next Tuesday. I hope we have something to present of alternatives at our work session the following week, such that we can consider it at a public meeting 2 weeks hence.
Okay.
But you can always come and make comments. You have 2 commentary periods, and you will be recognized.
And just to be clear, Walker has done these kinds of studies everywhere. It's not like these are problems that are unique to Mamaroneck. They find them everywhere, and the solutions are unique to each community. So people have said you didn't talk to merchants. They had a public meeting in November where merchants showed up. And when they say that, what is it that they did not consider? What information would merchants or anyone else provide Walker that they do not consider that would change the conclusions?
But the truth of the matter is, okay, listen, nobody knows better than merchants on Mamaroneck Avenue what should be better and should be good for the community to keep it, A, as a friendly village, and B, to create more parking space. I'm not saying that Walker doesn't know what they're talking about. They get paid a lot of money to give you these surveys, and it doesn't always work in their favor, or our favor, I should say, okay? They're coming up and they're presuming certain things that we should do and take a forward initiative action, okay, to either create more spaces on Mamaroneck Avenue or create more spaces back behind CVS. Rather than hire the Walker study, okay, we could have done this on our own, saved a lot of money, communicated with the Mamaroneck Chamber of Commerce, communicated with residents and store owners on Mamaroneck Avenue, because you have a twofold type of situation. You have people living upstairs on top of stores, okay, which they need to park also, okay, and then you have, stores that do business all day long. Everybody says, well, I can't find a spot then, and I can't find a spot now. There are certain times that you'll be able to find a spot on Mamaroneck Avenue. But after 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, when the restaurants kick in, okay, because right now we're called Restaurant Row, okay, and it's almost utterly impossible to find a spot to park after 4 o'clock for two reasons.
Okay, so that was the recognized problem. And then what you're saying is we didn't need any professional study. But what Leon is explaining, and I guess, and the board decided, although wasn't a unanimous decision,
3-2,
to bring the consulting company in and with their expertise, take a look at the bigger picture and offer
I think the
solutions.
retention of Walker, I think, was a 5-0 vote. It was
irrelevant.
It's a matter, I guess it's a matter of record.
Can I get off the subject? Can I get off the subject of parking and just kind of do something that I've done? Okay.
Are you going to sing?
I do a no. Sing no.
I thought you were going to sing.
No.
Okay.
I'll sing Far, Far Away. Anyway, I took on a wine trail, and it's our 9th year.
Now we're talking.
Okay.
Let's get off this parking
and I've had it for 9 years. Well, we've been doing it for 9 years. And originally we hired somebody to go out and do this. And we paid a lot of money. And the first year we lost a lot of money. And they recommended we should do these things. Well, make a long story short, we stopped it for 1 year, and then we went back and I took charge. When I originally took charge, Jennifer Graziano was the president at the time, and her and I were doing it together. And we had it the first year, and we had like between 60 and 100 people, okay? She left as president, I became president, I took charge of it, and right now, for the last 3 years, okay, we have over 350 people, okay? And we're going to continue to grow. Did I need to hire somebody to pay me to tell me what I should do and what I shouldn't do? I know how to do it, okay? I'm in the retail business. I promote it all day long, okay? I'm doing something right.
I think we hear your argument.
So sometimes studies do help, but you have to go with your own premonition and your own recognition of what people have to say, not what studies have to do for you.
To follow up on that, in fact, the Budget Committee, when I chaired it 3 or 4 years ago, recommended that the village buy multi-space meters, extend hours on the avenue, raise rates to $1 on the avenue. It was ignored. 2 years ago, when I was initially elected to the board, I came to the board and said, let's do that. And the response from the mayor was, no, let's get a consultant to tell us what to do. So I said, let's hire them after we install the multi-space meter so we get more data about utilization. It'll be a better study. And we actually issued a request for proposals on multi-space meters, and we got responses. We shelved it, and instead we went with the consultant. The consulting study would have been a lot more useful had it been done after we got multi-space meters and generated data.
Okay, and about
and this is a very important point, because it's very typical of Trustee Potok to continue
let's not do the personal attacks.
No, it's not the personal attacks, because it's the specific comments he said. We're talking about right here.
You can disagree, but let's not.
Fine, I'll disagree, and I'll go exactly to what he just related. The fact of the matter is, it's exactly what happened with in Brookline. They did put it in, and this was based on a Walker study. And they took it out because they found out it's no good. So if it works there, it's going to work here too.
They installed pay and display, and they have a very different on-street parking. It's parallel parking. It's not diagonal parking. So you have to walk farther to meter and you have to walk back.
I
People
disagree.
didn't like.
Basically, the idea was
However, we are
curb by
where
individual
we're at, right? And we
Correct.
want to move the village forward.
Yes.
And it's,
And we
but
have
it's
another
one
question.
example
Okay.
out of dozens of people
Right.
who followed
Okay.
Walker's study
Yeah.
recommendations and didn't return anything and just are happy with implementation. So
Well, that's why we have
if you
the
find one
controversy now.
example, that doesn't negate the rule.
Right.
Okay.
We have a disagreement. Obviously, I don't think any solution is going to be unanimous.
Oh, no.
No.
I think this might be our last question.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
And it's from our very own Shayla Navarro, our executive producer, and she asks, why did the Board of Trustees approve to buy the meters in the first place without deciding on the parking resolutions prior?
Very good question. And
Parking
that-
resolutions, I don't understand that question. Do
You mean about
The-
pay by
the-
space versus pay by plate, how we would do
There's
it?
New meters,
all the open
period.
questions, that's correct.
Because, yeah, and the resolutions are tabled as we speak. Why have they still been purchased and about to be installed?
It was
Still.
voted on by the majority of the Board of Trustees. Again, it was a
Well,
3-2
it's
vote.
the majority rules, and
In
and they were
Simple-
purchased.
simple
In
math.
Purchased in October.
Simple math.
The board decided to purchase them by vote in October. The actual purchase was delayed. It's a long period to get them, so we were told you have options, you'll need to decide at some point. We haven't gotten around to it because we haven't gotten around to it.
Are you
And
talking
some
about?
of the silly options were, we should have a green, so it's an extra $300 per machine, and went on and on. But the fact of the matter is, you hit a very good point, and that was what the original meeting was. Nothing is supposed to happen until we do the wayfaring.
That's not true.
It's fancy because we were going to go around, you said it yourself at the meeting,
That's
look at the
not true.
board minutes.
That's not
After the people complained, before you know what to do, we're going to go around and put up the sign so you can park in the back, you can park down in the regatta where there's spaces and so on. And it's to be the friendly village.
But
People
that's
that
in
come they're
progress
gonna
now,
go.
isn't it?
And
The
now it's in
design of
progress, yeah.
signage?
Because it
And
was
it's-
stopped because of the democratic process of the people coming to the meetings. That's what
The
stopped it.
multi-space meters would be from Mamaroneck Avenue.
Yeah.
We need some signage to whatever we install to inform them what to do.
Not
Before
necessarily
we
from
put
Mamaroneck
in,
Avenue.
when we put in any other meters off the avenue, by that point, we should have the wayfinding recommendations finalized, and we could do that simultaneously so as to minimize the confusion and.
It's not
and
stuck
it's-
in cement. The possibility is to have those multimeters off
Well-
Mamaroneck Avenue.
People will have another chance to talk
Absolutely.
to you and to the trustees.
To the full
Yes.
board.
To the full
To the
board.
full
On
board.
Tuesday,
On Tuesday, May
May
26th.
26th. At what
Holidays
time?
Monday.
7:30.
7:30.
7:30. So folks, now you know where you have to be on Tuesday, the 26th at 7:30.
Emails are welcomed also. We
Email,
all-
what is the email address to the Board of Trustees?
Mayor and board at vomny.org.
Okay, mayor and board,
Correct.
spell A-N-D out, mayor
Correct.
and board
Correct.
at VOM?
ny.org.
Okay.
Or N. Rosenblum at VOMNY.
Well, now that just goes to you in all
Oh,
fairness.
he'll share that.
That's correct.
Only if it agrees with his
We
point of view, of course.
We share them. Norman, Mayor Rosenblum, thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure.
Steve,
Thank you.
you
It's
for
terrific. Thank you.
coming down.
It's always
And
good.
Leon,
Thank you.
can I reach you there, buddy? Thank you very much for coming down.
I'm not going to sing yet. I'm not
Sibylla,
going to sing.
thank you for doing what you're doing, and don't go away. We've got more. In fact, we've got LMC Varsity Sports Play of the Week coming up, and we're going to talk about our future innovators from the STEM Alliance Science Fair. Sounds good.
Sounds pretty
I have a
good.
great-
You should
great
stay
program.
tuned.
You're watching The Local Live.
The only news show on Larchmont and Mamaroneck on LMC TV.
And in the LMC TV Varsity Sports Play of the Week, the Section 1 lacrosse playoffs got underway and the Rhinebeck girls squad hosted their first ever playoff game. With the time winding down, junior Natalie Morelli forced a turnover at midfield, sprinted towards the goal, and scored what ended up being the game winner.
Here comes O'Connor across the midline. Oh, and a fantastic takeaway by Natalie Morelli. Here comes Morelli with Jess Gottlieb on her wing. Morelli goes into the heart of the goal. Shot and score! Beautiful insurance goal by Natalie Morelli with 1:15 remaining in the game. Fantastic play from the junior Natalie Morelli.
Also, congratulations are in order for the Mamaroneck boys lacrosse team who just hours ago defeated Mayapack 12-11 in overtime to win their third Section 1 Class A championship in the last 4 years. Way to go, Tigers! The STEMtastic Festival this past Saturday was a great success. Over 2,000 people joined to have a hands-on learning experience in the science, technology, engineering, math, and arts field. Sabila Chipoziwa has the story.
The Local Live is back at Hammock's Middle School to check out their second annual science fair that features not only science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, but also art. Let's see what the innovators of tomorrow have created.
On Saturday, May 16, the efforts of the STEM Alliance organizers were well received by local residents.
We are absolutely thrilled to have such a variety of people here. I feel like this year it's even more intergenerational than it was. A lot more teenagers this year. So our festival is growing and it's learning, and we learn along with the attendees.
Central School student Jerry Orans exhibited his invention, the Hovercraft 2.0.
I wanted to try a hovercraft. We tweaked a video we saw online, and then we wound up with the small 4x4 disc and later the 4x8 disc.
Or maybe you prefer being creative on the ground.
Nerdy Derby is about learning through hands-on building, looking at the discoveries that you could craft by yourself, and then seeing the performance right in front of you, seeing it fail or seeing it succeed. We've added a few programming to the event. We're doing a tournament race this year. People are going to race throughout the day, and then we're going to have trophies for everybody, all the winners. We have some new lighting installation over there. So it's just having fun.
Art has made its way into the fair for those who like exploration and color. Senator George Latimer shared his thoughts about the importance of the fair.
I'm pretty amazed. My background, political science, this is real science, and it's very interesting. There are things that I'm not sure how they work, so I can imagine the kids who are coming in and they're participating in it, they're getting turned on to science, they're getting turned on to math and engineering by actually doing stuff. It's a fun, but it's also educational.
NASA astronaut Captain Catherine Heyer made a landing at the fair to give a message to future explorers.
I guarantee you there will be opportunities that come to you that you cannot even imagine right now, which is again why I really stress build that tool bag full of skills so that when the time comes you can raise your hand and say, I know I have the skills that it takes to do that job.
How about Legos? Problem solving and experimentation took the shape of the Tappan Zee Bridge at one workshop.
So we've teamed up with the guys building the Tappan Zee Bridge, and we have built a Lego model of it. So what the kids are doing here is building a replica of that. And that type of program, what we do is we want to teach kids concepts of STEM, and then help them build certain skills like fine motor skills, spatial recognition, following the model plans, taking a 2D model and putting it into a 3D model.
Think science is cool? It is.
So it is important for them to get started early, hence why from our company we also have a 4.0 program where $4 is donated to programs that are exposing inner city kids to science, technology, engineering, and we put the A in there for arts and math, call it STEAM. So yes, it is important to us that kids get exposure to STEM, or we call it STEAM.
With these exhibitions, workshops, and more, this year's Hammock Science Fair proved to be yet another success and full of promise. For the Local Live, I'm Sabila Chipaziwa.
We have not one but 3 pets of the week. These 3 pups were found abandoned in a Texas parking lot and are in need of a home. Please contact Andrea at andrea@snarnortheast.org or fill out a foster application at www.snarnortheast.org/foster. That's a wrap for this week's edition of The Local Live. We talk about who protects our children, do you know a child or young adult who's at risk? Join us with Cora Greenberg, Executive Director of the Westchester Children's Association, and find out how you can help. For more information on the stories aired, you can visit our website at lmctv.org. And if you have any questions or comments, or you would like to volunteer, email us at thelocallive@lmctv.org. Thanks for watching. I'm Kat Galliano, and have a good night.
Tell us what you think. In person, over the phone, online. Watch and hear yourself on TV. You tell us, we air it. This is The Local Live.